daughter be a librarian? Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kira, and today we are talking about Fourth Wing. Just to preface this video, I had no idea what this book is about. The only reason why I had heard of it was because I was at a bridal show with my grandma, and this guy stopped me and asked me if my tattoo was for Fourth Wing. And he was like, my girlfriend loves the book. Have you read it? And I was like, no, that is not what my tattoo's for. It's also not for Game of Thrones, just so you know. And so then that kind of has just been sitting in the back of my mind, and then Fourth Wing was on Kindle Unlimited, so here we are. To start this review, it's going to be long as shit. I have 47 pages to get through of my script. It took me 3 days to write all of this down. The book was 650 pages long, 39 chapters, and I have some thoughts. So here we are. Also, I'm recording on my laptop because I have a microphone that connects to my desktop. I live off the highway, and it's loud as shit because of all of the cars that drive by, and I would rather have good audio quality and not good video quality because you need to be able to hear me if I'm gonna be talking about this shit. Going into disclaimers, this is going to be incredibly detailed going into the book, so if you don't want spoilers, read the book before you come here. 2, I put my hair in space buns. They're not even. I don't care. 3, if you like this book and you have a hard time dealing with other people having not good opinions about the book that you like, don't watch it. Don't leave a comment. I have had a few other book reviews that I've done where I have shit on a book and I get long comments of people being like, I love this book. Good, great, I love it. Good, have fun. I didn't like the book, and that's why we're here. And 3, this is something I have come to terms with. Reviews are not for authors, reviews are for readers. So if you're the author of this book or somebody who is really close to the author, don't watch this video, just in case I say something that's going to hurt your feelings. Yeah, if you have made it through that and want to stay, here we go. So, starting off, Fourth Wing is about dragons. I just have to say, it took a while for me to gather my thoughts about how I felt about this book. 1, because I very much enjoyed the romance. 2, I don't know how much I enjoyed the fantasy. So, yeah, basically, we're jumping right in. Chapter 1 starts on Transcription Day, which is basically like Reaping Day or whatever the fuck the day is in Divergent, where they decide what thing they're going into. You meet the main character, Violet. She's weak as shit and can barely carry her backpack, and her mom is the general of their whatever, the country or whatever, and will not watch one of her children enter the scribe quadrant. You quickly learn that the scribes are pretty much just glorified librarians. There's also the healer quadrant, which is just a hospital. And she's forcing Violet into the writers quadrant because both of her older siblings have been in the writers, and her mom is like really well known and everything, so she was like, I will not let my daughter be a librarian, and decided that she's going to send her into the writers area. Violet was forced to train for 6 months, even though she spent her whole life training to be something else. Her older sister is fighting with her mom to try to stop her from putting her through this because she's small and weak and sprains her joints all the time. I quickly caught on. I would have never known what this was if it wasn't for my fiance, so shout out to him. Violet has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is shortened to EDS. It is an inherited group of disorders that affect connective tissues, including skin, joints, and blood vessels. That is why she's weak. She has a disorder, and the author also has the same disorder, which I was curious about. But yeah, so she pretty much just has something that disables her and works against her, and you will quickly learn that during this book everybody uses it against her, and it's infuriating, but I know that that's very much how things operate in the real world. So you find out that the chance of dying going into the writer's quadrant is really high because you have to cross the parapet. I didn't know what that was. It's basically like a giant wall, and it's even more dangerous for Violet since she's only been training for 6 months. Mira ends up asking her mom if she's eager to bury another child, and you find out that Violet and Mira's older brother Brennan died a couple years earlier, and the grief manifested so much in their dad that he had chest pains and died a few years later. One of the things that I do know is that EDS is inherited, like, from your family. So I'm curious if Violet's dad had it, and that's probably the reason why, because he had weak blood vessels, but that's just a theory. Her mom gets mad, tells them to leave. Mira then takes Violet to her room, starts repacking her bag. She's like ditching her books, giving her all these pointers, tells her that she should cut her hair because it's a long mess and there's silver at the ends, which makes her a target. And then Violet says, you know very well the natural pigment seems to gradually abandon it no matter the length. I looked into this. I didn't see anything that specifically said that, like, losing pigment in your hair correlated specifically to EDS, but I did read that it's very common for people who have EDS to have a vitamin B deficiency, which can affect your hair color. So that's interesting. Mira then tells her to be careful because someone could kill her at any moment, and except for when you're sleeping, because that's against the codex, which is like the rule book. Basically, whittling down the pool of people increases your chance to get bonded. Being bonded is all of these dragons. The dragons are the ones that make the rules. The humans are just like, we obey your every wish, dragons, which, I mean, I would too if they could just fucking burn me on the spot, which they do quite often. So since there's only a limited amount of dragons that are willing to bond with humans, people try to kill each other to increase their chances, which is just great. Even better that your mom's sending you into this, isn't it? Basically, they're heading to the opening gate, and Mira tells Violet to find Dane, which is Violet's best friend. He's a year older than her, and he's the second year. He's already in the writer's quadrant. Violet starts getting all dreamy-eyed, thinking about him, and Mira tells her to stay away from the second years. Don't mess around with second years. If you want to get laid, and you should, she lifts her eyebrows, often, considering you never know what the day brings, then screw around with your own year. Nothing is worse than Connect's gossiping that you slept your way to safety. Then you get the first glance into Violet just being super fucking horny all the time. She's just always wanting to have sex and always horny and just always making observations about guys and how she wants to fuck them. So then I started thinking, I think that this writer would be a really good romance writer. So I looked her up. She has primarily only really wrote romance books before this. So that just makes so much more sense now. Guys, I didn't even think about that, but this is her first ever fantasy. So romance, great. Word building. The country has 6 providences for military service. Some volunteer, some are sentenced to punishment. Everyone has to pass the entrance exam. Violet's surprised that she passed it. And in line, she sees a separatist kid, which is basically there was a rebellion that happened and all of these people got killed and their kids were left. And they marked them with a shimmering mark on their wrist called a relic to let people know that those kids are the kids of people who went against the government. So basically, the kids are just being punished because of what their parents did. Mira tells Violet to stay the hell away from Zayden Warson. Guess what she does? The exact opposite. Stay the hell away from Zayden Warson. The air rushes from my lungs. That name, Zayden Warson, she converns, fear lacing her gaze. He's a third year and he will kill you the second he finds out who you are. His father was the great betrayer. He led the rebellion, I say quietly. What is Zayden doing here? All of the children of the leaders were conscripted as punishment for their parents' crimes, Mira whispers as we shuffle sideways moving with the line. Mom told me they never expected Warson to make it past the parapet. Then they figured a cadet would kill him, but once his dragon chose him, well, there's nothing much that can be done. He's risen to the rank of wing leader. Yeah, so she does the opposite of what her sister tells her to do, which is not surprising, because would there be a book if she listened to her sister? No, not at all. Before she starts to climb the stairs, her sister says, "Don't die, Violet. I hate to be an only child." Which is... Then Violet proceeds to ignore another piece of advice that her sister gives her, which was don't make friends, and chats with 2 people named Rhiannon and Dylan on the way up. Dylan ends up falling pretty quick into the crossing thing, and Violet switches one of her boots with Rhiannon's because she realizes that Rhiannon's don't have the grip that hers do. And then 3 riders are waiting at the entrance to collect their names and give instructions before they cross. You find out they are very diligent about their record keeping. There's always somebody there to collect somebody's name. Violet lays her eyes on the 3rd rider, and we get this. He's tall, with wind-blown black hair and dark brows. The line of his jaw is strong and covered with warm, tawny skin, a dark stubble, and when he folds his arm across his torso, the muscles in his chest and arms ripple, moving in a way that makes me swallow, and his eyes are the shade of gold-flecked onyx. The contrast is startling, jaw-dropping even. Everything about him, his features, are so harsh that they look carved, and yet they're astonishingly perfect, like an artist worked a lifetime sculpting him. And at least a year of that was spent on his mouth. He's the most exquisite man I've ever seen. Living in the war college means I've seen a lot of men. Even the diagonal scar that bisects his left eyebrow and marks the top corner of his cheek only makes him hotter, flaming hot, scorching hot, gets you into trouble and you like it level of hot. Suddenly I can't remember exactly why Mira told me not to fuck around with outside my year group. Immediately after this, she finds out that this is Zayden. What else would you expect? They have this weird exchanging of info where he's like, "Oh my god, your mom's a general." And she's like, "Oh my god, your dad killed my brother. We're even." And he's like, "Not really." And then she's like, "Oh, okay, so are you going to kill me?" He says that he won't waste his energy because crossing the thing will do it for him. Chapter 2. Violet tells Rhiannon she'll see her on the other side as Rhiannon starts to cross. She's worried because a storm is coming in and it's making it windy and the rain will make the stone slick, but they don't care because if you can't cross it when it's raining, then do you even have what it takes to be in the writer's quadrant? Then comes in this guy named Jack Barlow. He's an arrogant ass and decides that he just hates Violet because that just starts this whole tirade of him just being an asshole to be an asshole. Like, that's his whole plot line in this book. She starts crossing. He gets behind her to calm her nerves. She starts to think about what she knows, facts and logic and history, because she's been trained her whole life to be a scribe, which you get reminded of quite often. And then here starts the trend of Violet just listing info to calm her nerves, but I think it was kind of the author's maybe like roundabout sneaky way to just spend a lot of time world building at you, and this happens more than once and I hate it. Don't info dump at me. Anyways, she's nearly across and decides to look over her shoulder because why not, and watches Jack just fucking launch a boy off the side, and she's like, oh shit, he's a bad man. She nearly falls, fucking up her knee, and she can't focus because Jack declares that she's next. She's like, shit. So she starts running and throws herself through the opening. This is what she does. Spinning, I grip a dagger from its sheath at my ribs, just as Jack slides to a halt above me on the parapet. His breath is choppy, his eyes ruddy. Murder is etched in his narrow, glacial blue eyes as he glares down at me, and where the tip of my dagger now indents the fabric of his breeches, against his balls. Jack pretty much just declares that he doesn't give a shit that she's pointing a dagger at his nutsacks and that he's going to kill her. Then she starts quoting the codex at him, and the writer that's at the other side to record their name to prove that they made it across is like, yeah, she's right. If you do this, this will be breaking the rules and you'll be executed. She asks him, are you going to follow the rules? I ask Jack. My head is buzzing and arms feel so damn heavy, but I keep my knife on target. Guess I don't have a choice. The corner of his mouth tilts into a sneer. His posture relaxes as he raises his hand, palms out. I lower my dagger but keep it palmed and ready as I move sideways towards the redhead keeping roll. Jack steps down to the courtyard, his shoulder knocking mine as he walks by, pausing to lean in. You're dead, Soaringale. I'm going to be the one to kill you. Now she has two people who wants to kill her. One because her mom killed his dad, and the other one just because he's a bad, bad man. Now that she's escaped death, Violet meets back up with Rhiannon and tries to act like she's not limping from landing on her knee because she doesn't want anybody to think that she is weak. Then ta-da! Oh, Patches, no. Dane shows up, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, I fucking hate this guy. But this is the description we get from him. A tall figure in a pristine black uniform steps out of the crowd, charging towards us, and though Rhiannon manages to dodge, I stumble smack into his chest. Violet, strong hands, catches my elbows to steady me. I look up into a pair of familiar, striking brown eyes, flared wide in obvious shock. Relief sweeps through me and I try to smile, but it probably comes out like a distorted grimace. He seems taller than he was last year. The beard that cuts across his jaw is new, and he's filled out in a way that makes me blink. Or maybe it's just my vision going hazy at the edges. The beautiful, easygoing smile that starred its way into many of my fantasies is far from the scowl that purses his mouth. Everything about him seems a little harder. But it works for him. The line of his chin, the set of his brow, even the muscles of his biceps are rigid under my fingertips. As I try to find my balance, sometime in the last year, Dane went from attractive and cute to gorgeous. Basically, he's just like super fucking pissed that she's here and drags her into this alcove in the wall. She declares that she's going to be sick. He tells her to put his head between her knees. And he asked her why she's here, and she doesn't really have a chance to answer him. And Rhiannon comes over to see if she's okay because some random guy just dragged her off, and Rhiannon's like, what's going on? Dane demands that Rhiannon not tell anybody what's going on, and Rhiannon says she wasn't planning on saying anything because Violet's the reason why she made it across the thing in the first place, and she pretty much owes her life to her. Violet and Rhiannon switch their shoes back. She tells Dane that she trusts her, so then Dane tells Rhiannon to go tell the redhead that watched Violet poke a dagger against Jack's balls that he is putting Rhiannon and Violet in his squad, and then he takes Violet to his room so they can wrap her knee without anybody seeing, so she doesn't fuse this week. And then he asked her why she's here, again, because she's supposed to be a scribe, and she says, what do you think happened? I challenge as we reach the iron rock gate that looks like it was built to keep out a troll or a dragon. He curses, your mother. My mother, I nod. Every Swarringale is a writer, don't you know? He tells her that even though he hates the fact that she's here and in danger, that he's happy to see her. I look up and our eyes meet. The tension that has been in my chest for the last week, hell, the last 6 months, eases. And for a second, it's just us. I've missed you. Maybe it's exposing a weakness, but I don't care. Dane knows almost everything that there is about me anyways. Yeah, I've missed you too, he said quietly, his eyes softening. My chest draws tight, and there's an awareness between us, and an intangible sense of anticipation as he looks at me. Maybe after all these years, we're finally on the same page when it comes to wanting each other, or maybe he's just relieved to see an old friend. So she's just horny again. He tells her that she looks different, and she says it's because she's wearing riding leathers because her sister changed her into like super tight clothes to help with like wind resistance and everything. And she's never worn black clothes like that. She asks him if it's a different bad, and he's more flustered. "Why, Dane?" I grin, walk towards him and grasp the door handle at his side. "You've seen me in swimwear, tunics, and even ball gowns, and you're telling me that it's leather that does it for you?" He scoffs, but there's a slight flush to his cheeks as his hand covers mine to open the door. "Glad to see our year apart has indulged your tongue, V." "Oh," I toss over my shoulder as we walk into the hallway. "I can do quite a few things with my tongue. You'd be impressed." My smile is so wide that it almost hurts, and just for a second I forget that we're in the writer's quadrant, or that I just survived the parapet. His eyes heat. Guess he'd forgotten too. Then again, Mira always made it clear that writers weren't an inhibited bunch behind these walls. There's not much of a reason to deny it to yourself when you may not live through tomorrow. She's super horned up and ignoring her sister's advice again. She wants to sleep with the second year. They leave his room without doing anything. You quickly find out Dane is an aggressive stickler for the rules. He will do anything for Violet above breaking the rules. So yeah, they never sleep with each other. Just spoiler. They head down the main stairwell, and he's like, "Hey, there's a stairwell under the main floor that can take us through the healer's quadrant, and then I can get you the scribe quadrant." And she's shocked and tells him again, "My mom's gonna be pissed. I can't just leave here." His response to that is, "This place will kill you, Violet. You can't stay here. Everyone will understand. You didn't volunteer. Not really." And then she gets pissed and points out that she crossed the parapet, and 15% of candidates don't. He backs up another step. "I'm not saying you didn't just kick absolute ass by getting here, V, but you have to leave. You'll break the first time they put you in the sparring ring, and that's before the dragon senses that you're—" He shakes his head and looks away, his jaw clenching. "I'm what?" My hackles rise. "Go ahead and say it. When they sense that I'm less than others? Is that what you mean? Damn it." He rakes his hand over his close-cropped, light brown curls. "Stop putting words in my mouth. You know what I mean. Even if you survive to threshing, there's no guarantee that a dragon will bond with you. As it was, last year we had 34 unbonded cadets who have just been sitting around waiting to restart the year with this class to get a chance of bonding again, and they're all perfectly healthy. So he's ableist. You can't do this because you're weak and should have never been here in the first place. I can't protect you fully either, so don't expect that." Then she asked him why Rhiannon would go tell someone to put her in his squad if he was trying to sneak her off in the first place, and he said that it was just to get rid of Rhiannon. So he doesn't let up until she tells him that Mira couldn't even talk their mom out of it, and then that is enough to Percy, and then that's enough to get him to back down. Not because of Violet, because she lets him know that her sister couldn't even talk her mom out of it. Makes it back to the courtyard, meeting up with Rhiannon for the first time, and they announce that 300 cadet made it through and 67 didn't. That's the beginning of them just listing off how many people are left and like how many people die. At the beginning of every day before they start classes or anything, they go through and they just read off names like one by one from people who died, and like they're like, "Oh, we read your name once, you're remembered," and then that's it. And then everyone's sectioned off. Rhiannon and Violet are put in Dane's squad, and then last second Xaden comes over to the second wing leader and gets Dane's squad swapped, putting Violet in his fourth wing, which I kind of figured that out considering that's what the name of the book is, which is ran by him. So much for staying away from him, and also he's in charge of you now. Good luck, bitch. Chapter 4, we start the next day where they list off all the people that died the day before. That's just great. So now they have class and sparring later. This is where we learn that all of the first years that didn't bond with the dragons last year get to repeat and try to bond this time around or die. Dane pulls Violet aside before class to check in with her and make sure she ate and that no one tried to kill her. She asks him why they were moved to fourth wing, and he tells her that it's common knowledge to the leaders that Xaden wants to kill her, which is fucking crazy. Oh yeah, it's just common knowledge that he just wants to kill you, and everybody's like, well, shit. Violet leaves to go to class and catches Xaden staring at her. He makes a comment about Dane and Violet just being super obvious about how close they are. Chapter 5, we start in Battle Brief, which is a class that they go over recent invasions to test the knowledge of every year and see how they can handle a situation. So they basically like, this is what happened, what would you do? And people raise their hand and they're like, this is the suggested, and they're like, that might work, but like, what if this happens? And it's just like a bunch of what if questions. Violet is whispering answers to Rhiannon and gets called out for it, and then flashes her knowledge because she was trained as a librarian for years and has read a bunch of Battle Brief stuff and knows a lot about battle strategy. Then we skip forward and we have our first sparring lesson. Jack breaks the jaw of the kid that he's fighting because why not? Violet shits herself because he wants to kill her, and he just broke the jaw of the kid that he was fighting. She gets paired with the second year named Imogen, which I really don't like that name. No offense to people who are named Imogen, but just something about that name just doesn't I just don't like the way that it flows out of my mouth. But her parents were executed by Violet's mom, so Imogen tries to kill her. Violet refuses to yield, and Imogen ends up dislocating her shoulder and breaking her arm. Chapter 6. Dane carries Violet to the healer's quadrant. You shouted and carried me out of there like I mean something to you. I focus on the scar on his jaw, the stubble of his tan skin, anything to keep from feeling the utter destruction in my shoulder. You do mean something to me, he kicks again, and now everyone knows. So Dane made her look weak because he was like, oh my god, she broke your arm and dislocated your shoulder. But Jack also got yelled at for breaking that kid's jaw, so I think that everybody probably would have just been like, holy shit, because it's their first time sparring. You put her against a second year, then we're surprised that the second year proceeded to really fucking hurt her. Violet goes to the healers, and she's been seeing them for the past 5 years, so they all know who she is. And then there's Guy who's sing it. I meant to look up how to say that. Basically, when someone bonds with their dragon, there's like a special chemistry between the dragon and the person who's bonded with them, and they get like a special power. And there's this guy named Nolan, and his power is mending. So instead of battling or anything, he's in the healer's quadrant because his power is really rare. Dane wants them not to fix her arm because he wants to have a chance to admit her into the scribes, even though she's made it very clear that she doesn't fucking want that. And her mom won't be on board, and they pretty much have to kick him out because he won't listen to Violet or her choices at all. Violet gets back to where they sleep with a surprise from her sister. It's a book that was her brother's, with tips to make it through the next couple years that he had given to Mira. But when anybody dies, everything they owned is supposed to be burned for some reason. Mira having it is like a little bit of some craziness. Also, first years aren't allowed to send or receive any letters, and the first year of them being there doesn't really explain why. It just says that they're not allowed to. So how did Mira get the book onto her bed? We never find out. Chapter 7. So every chapter starts with a quote from some book or some history book or the rule book or something, another way to give you information in kind of like a subtle way. And this is how chapter 7 starts. In the best interest of preserving peace within Naviar, no more than 3 cadets carrying a rebellion relic may be assigned to any squad of any quadrant. And then that it says Addendum 5.2. In addition to last year's changes, marked ones assembling in groups of 3 or more are now considered to be an act of insidious conspiracy and is hereby a capital offense. Addendum 5.3. Violet has snuck out after curfew to collect poison. This bitch is wild. She climbs a tree and hears people coming, and then she sees Xaden and Imogen showing up under a tree whispering to each other, but she can't hear what they're talking about. And then all of the kids that are in the Writer's Quadrant that also have rebellion relics show up, which is a capital offense. Why? Because the general's dragon, his name's Melgreen, the general, marked all of them to be like, look at these bitches' parents went against us. And his dragon gives him the ability to see future battle plans. But the relics that his dragon put on the kids, if they meet in a group of 3 or more, he can't see them or what they're planning to do. So that is why they made the addendum that if 3 or more of them meet up and someone finds out, that's a capital offense, because he can't see what they're doing and they could be plotting against the government. I have to say to this, why didn't his dragon tell him that this was a thing that would happen before he marked all of them? The dragons are supposed to be like the all-knowing beings that the humans follow because the dragons know all. So wouldn't his dragon know that if he marked all of these kids, there's 107 of them, with this relic, that maybe that wouldn't be a good idea? That confused me. Anyways, Violet sneaks down on the branches to listen to what they're talking about because she's like, they're not supposed to be meeting up. What are they doing? It's just Xaden being a good guy and asking how things are going and giving the first year's advice, asking them how they're doing in sparring, if their ass is getting kicked, pairs people up with people to help them learn. Be watching out for them pretty much. And she realizes that besides them meeting in more than 3, literally nothing that they're doing is against the law. So then someone ends up asking Xaden when they get to kill Violet, and Xaden says that she's his and that he'll handle her. So they all want to kill her. And the only reason why they want to kill her is because it's just a ha-ha to her mom. But like, little do they know, in my opinion, I think that her mom views Violet as weak and sent her in the Writer's Quadrant to get killed, so then she could be like, oh, my daughter died trying to join the... Holy shit, my cats have the zoomies. My daughter died joining the Writer's Quadrant, and like, what a sacrifice, instead of my daughter's a scribe. It's just my opinion on her mom. Then everybody leaves, and Violet thinks that the coast is clear, so she climbs out of the tree, but it's not. Xaden grabs her and holds a dagger to her throat. Screaming you die, he whispers. My stomach plummets as an elbow is replaced with the sharp bite of a dagger at my throat. I freeze. I recognize the rough pitch of Zayden's voice anywhere. Fucking Swarringale. He yanks back the hood of my cloak. How did you know? My tone is outright I don't know that word, but whatever. If he's going to kill me, I'm not going down as some simpering little beggar. Let me guess, you could smell my perfume. Isn't that what always gives the heroine away in the books? He scoffs. I command shadows, but sure, it was your perfume that gave you away. And he lowers his knife and steps away. So you find out that his power is he can literally control shadows. Don't try to keep secrets from him because the shadows will tell him. He asks her if she was eavesdropping. She's like, oh shit, now he has the reason to actually kill me because I was eavesdropping on his plans. And she pulls out a dagger and backs up to put space between them because she's like, well, if I'm gonna fight him, I'm gonna go down trying. He pointedly looks at one dagger and then another and then sighs, folding his arms across his chest. That stance is really the best defense you can muster. No wonder Imogen nearly ripped your arm off. She throws daggers at them. She throws daggers at him and they hit the tree behind him and he's like, you missed. And she's like, maybe back up a couple steps and test that theory. And so he does, and the daggers brush both of his ears. Tell me again that I missed, I threatened, taking the dagger to my right hand at the tip. Fascinating. You look all frail and breakable, but you're really a violent little thing, aren't you? Pulls her daggers out of the trees, and she's like, oh, well, now he has my weapons. Guess he's going to attack me. And instead, he goes, you should show that little trick to Jack Barlow, Xaden says, turning his palms upward, offering me my daggers. I'm sorry? This is a trick. This has to be a trick. He moves closer and I lift my blade. My heart stumbles, the beat irregular as fear floods my system. The neck-snapping first year who's very publicly vowed to slaughter you, Xaden clarifies as my blade presses against his cloak at the level of his abdomen. He reaches under my own cloak and slides one blade into the sheath at my thigh, then pulls back the side of my cloak and pauses. His gaze locks on the length of my braid where it falls over my shoulder, and I could swear he stopped breathing for a heartbeat before he slides the remaining dagger into one of the sheaths at my ribs. He'd probably think twice about plotting your murder if you threw a few daggers at his head. So she's like confused at him giving her advice. He asks her if she's going to tell anybody about the gathering and she says no. And he says, well, guess I'm gonna have to wait and see if you keep your word, and if you do, I guess I owe you a favor, and then he leaves. Chapter 8. This is the next day of sparring. Dane warns Violet to steer clear of Jack. Violet weighs that against the opposite advice that Xaden gave her, which was throwing daggers at his head. Then she heads off to breakfast to breakfast serving duty and puts poisons in her first opponent's food. This just starts a trend where she, in her brother's little book that he gave her, there was a tip about figuring out who you were going to be paired with for your next sparring event. So she would go find out who she was getting paired with, and then she got herself assigned to breakfast duty so she could poison them to make them weaker, so fighting them would be easier. After you see her poison her opponent's food, they have a class where they cover all different kinds of dragons. You find out that Xaden's dragons is one of the most ruthless, and that the one black one, there's two black dragons. One is the general's dragon, and there's one other one. They're very rare, and it has not bonded with anybody since his last rider died, which was almost 5 years ago because he almost died. The bonds between humans and dragons get stronger every time a dragon bonds with a human, and if a dragon dies, the human dies. But if the human rider dies, the dragon has a chance of dying depending on how strong their bond is. So the black dragon almost died because his rider was trying to save another rider, which it turns out that was Violet's brother. Sparring happens. Violet throws daggers at Jack's head to scare him. Xaden's impressed. Dane's pissed. Then it kind of time jumps over the next couple of her sparring matches where she continues to poison people. The last girl that she's supposed to go up against gets too sick, and Xaden volunteers to go against her. Chapter 9. Dane protests, but Xaden is a step above him, so he can't say anything. There's a lot of that where Dane's like, you can't do that, and Xaden's like, I'm your wing leader, you have to listen to me, and Dane's like, shit. We get a very sexual fighting scene where Xaden ends up wedging himself in between Violet's legs and slowly disarms her. He also gives her the nickname Violence, and I still don't know how I feel about that. Like, even, it's been like a week since I read this book. Yeah, I still don't know how I feel about him giving her that nickname. Then he reveals during this fight that he knows that she's been poisoning people beforehand, and tells her that she won't learn anything because she won't ever actually be able to know if she can handle someone at full strength. He spends this time giving her actual pointers that would work with like her smaller size. You're tiny, he says, like an insult. Well aware, my eyes narrow. So stop going for bigger moves that expose you. He drags the tip of a dagger down his side. A rib shot would have worked just fine. Then he guides her hands around his back, making himself vulnerable. Kidneys are a good fit from this angle too. I swallow, refusing to to think of the other things that are good fit at this angle. She's horny. The guy literally could kill her right here in front of everybody while they're sparring, and she's like, oh man, but you know what else we could do at this angle? Some crazy shit without our clothes on. Dane declares that he thinks that she's been taught enough for the day, and Xaden tells her exactly what I've been thinking. He's always that overprotective. Xaden grumbles, pressing up from the mat a few inches. He cares about me. I glare at him. He's holding you back. I agree. He's trying to hold her back. Not working. It's like Bella in Twilight, where Edward's like, you cannot do that. I said no. And Bella's like, well, what are you gonna do to stop me? And then does it anyways. That's pretty much what Violet and Dane are. He sheathes her last dagger back into her corset, and Violet asks him if he's going to disarm her, and he says my favorite line in the book: nope, defenseless women have never been my type. After sparring is over, we have another instance of Dane thinking Violet can't cut it and is trying to get her to leave to the scribe quadrant. They argue. Zane asks her questions like she doesn't know what's going to happen. Then it ends with her saying that she'll think about going to the scribes before going to the threshing, which is dragon bonding time. And I think that's like she has like 4 weeks to decide. She agrees to think about it to get him off her back, which doesn't work. But chapter 10. The beginning of this chapter is them running a course called the Gauntlet for the first time, and Violet watches a girl die. Then she takes it upon herself to burn the girl's things for her parents because they didn't want her things. There's like lists, there like different options that the parents can pick, and they picked the option to not come get her things. Xaden and her have a weird kind of heart-to-heart with him telling her that she's smart and can figure out another way to get past the last obstacle of the gauntlet, which pretty much is like the wall at the end of American Ninja Warrior where they have to like run up it and grab, but she's not fast enough and tall enough to do it. So he's like, you're smart, you can figure out another way around it. Chapter 11. It's the day that they run the gauntlet for real. Dane tries to convince Violet to leave. Again, Violet completes the course, but not the way you're supposed to. She uses one of the ropes on the side to help herself climb up, and she also uses a dagger to climb the wall. Amber Mavis, who is a wing leader, says that she cheated. Amber and Dane also had a thing, which comes up later when he was a first year, but she didn't cheat. She found a loophole in the codex, and Xaden takes her side. Amber's pissed about it. She starts quoting the codex at Amber, and Amber's like, are you quoting the codex at me? She's pretty much just a smartass and super smart. Okay, Amber goes, you think like a scribe. Yeah, because that's what she was supposed to do with herself, but that she's not there now. Chapter 12. We've made it to presentation day, which is the day that they parade all of the young first year cadets in front of all the dragons that are willing to bond, so the dragons can see what they have to work with. They kill anyone that shows weakness. 2 people get killed, and then everybody's surprised because there's this little golden dragon there. There were only supposed to be 100 dragons that were willing to bond, but now there's 101. All the dragons are like brown, black, green, red, or blue, and so to see the golden dragon was crazy because like that's not normal. Chapter 13, Threshing Day. The day the first years get to be set loose in a valley to see if they bonded with any of the dragons. So Violet did not run off to the scribes. Violet is walking around trying to see if there's any dragons that she feels a pull to that might have decided to bond with her from presentation day, and she overhears Jack, Oren, and Tyann walking and talking. Jack decides that they need to kill the golden dragon because it's only fair to weed out the weak, and he thinks that since it's so small, it's going to get somebody killed because they wouldn't be able to actually like hold on to its back and ride it. Violet decides that she needs to warn the dragon before they get to it so it has a chance to leave. When she gets to the dragon, it doesn't leave, and she's like, okay, well, how about you breathe some fire to help me out? Maybe use your claws. Doesn't have claws. So she has to fight the 3 of the guys on her own. Xaden shows up. She's like, oh my god, what is he doing here? But he can't interfere. That's like one of the rules of the threshing, is that the upper level, the squad leaders and the wing leaders can't interfere or anything because it's the dragon's time pretty much. But he warns them to rethink their actions to try to kill the little dragon. Chapter 14. Jack says he doesn't plan on it, which, shocker. Jack doesn't give a shit about the rules because he's fucking crazy. Xaden's dragon isn't happy about it. She's the reason why he's there. She's not fond of bullies, and she also is fond of the little dragon, and so she's like, just because he can't do anything doesn't mean I can't do anything. Violet ends up throwing a dagger into Jack's shoulder and completely severs a muscle or something and fucks it up, and he runs away. She knocks out Oren, and then the black dragon that hasn't bonded with anybody shows up and kills the last dude when he tries to run away, and then the dragon picks Violet and tells her to get on his back. After she gets on, he takes off, but she can't hold on, and she falls. Chapter 15, the dragon catches her. She asks the dragon why he picked her, and he tells her it's because she saved the golden dragon. Violet goes to give the name of her dragon to the records keeper, and the black dragon also tells her to give the name of the golden dragon to them. Chapter 16, people freak out and say that it's not fair that she has 2 dragons, but the dragons make the rules. They don't really have any say in the matter to begin with. The dragons fly off to go talk to see if it's okay for her to have two dragons or not. Meanwhile, Dane pulls Violet to the side after she gets her wounds fixed up because she sprained her ankle, got like cut and shit, and tells her that they're going to make her choose between the two dragons. Dane comes in being Dane again and tells her to pick the golden one because she's the safest choice. Yeah. He says it specifically because she wouldn't be able to ride her and therefore she wouldn't be able to go into battle. This is the point in the book where I just completely aligned myself with Xaden because Dane just really does not get it. He doesn't get it. And Xaden gives her the tools to actually persevere and succeed in the situation, and Dane is just like, nah, you can't do it. There's no way. You should just run away. It's fine. I'll help you. And I'm doing it because I care about you. Dane tells her that Xaden's dragon and the black dragon, Taran and Esgale, have been a mated pair for centuries, which means that wherever one goes, the other one has to go, so the dragons can be together. So Violet and Xaden are now just kind of linked because their dragons like to fuck each other. Violet tells Dane that Xaden showed up during the whole altercation because he asked her like what happened, and he convinces himself that Xaden manipulated the rushing because Xaden just can't be a good guy. Xaden explains that his dragon told him what was going on. She's never been a fan of bullies, Xaden says to me, but don't mistake that as an act of kindness towards you. She's fond of little dragon. Unfortunately, Taran chose you all on his own. Xaden's like, I was off to the side. I didn't do anything. If you were there and you saw her being teamed up 3-on-1, would you jump in and save her? Basically gets him to admit that he wouldn't save her, to also then prove that she puts too much faith in him. Xaden then explains that Taran, the black dragon's bonds are so powerful that the last time his rider died, he almost died too, which nearly killed Sigel because of their mated bond. Each time a dragon chooses a rider, that bond is stronger than the last, which means that if you die violence, it sets off a train of events that potentially ends up with me dying too. So now, Xaden is in the mode of trying to keep Violet alive, because if Violet dies, he dies. Potentially. But now that Taran is in play, the unbonded will also try to kill Violet because the bond is at its weakest at the beginning, and the unbonded use it as a chance to kill people who have bonded in hopes that their dragon will pick them because, oh, like, you killed my rider, so like obviously you're stronger, so I'll bond with you instead. Then the dragons come back with a decision on Violet, and the general Melgreen announces, while tradition has shown us that there is one rider for every dragon, there has never been a case of two dragons selecting the same rider, and therefore there is no dragon law against it, he declares. While we riders may not feel as though this is equitable, his tone implies that he's one of them. Dragons make their own laws. Both Heron and, he looks over his shoulder and his aide rushes forward to whisper in his ear, and Darna have chose Violet, and so their choice stands. Dane then runs up to Violet after the announcement and acts like he's excited about the fact that she gets to keep both of the dragons, even though he literally just tried to get her to pick between the two earlier. He's like, oh my god, you're gonna keep both of them, that's so crazy. And then he kisses her, and this is her reaction to that. His lips are soft, but the kiss is firm, and a delight races up my spine. After years, Dane is finally kissing me. The thrill is gone in less than a heartbeat. There's no heat, no energy, no sharp slice of lust. Disappointment sours the moment, but not for Dane. He's all smiles as he pulls away. It was over in an instant. It was everything I ever wanted, except shit, I don't want it anymore. So she realizes that she doesn't like Dane anymore, which, like, thank God, girl, because this guy is infuriating. Chapter 17. Now that Violet is a writer, they get to move into their own rooms. Before, they were in one big barrack with just bunk beds. Now that she is also bonded with Taran, everybody is saying hi to her. She pretty much just became popular overnight because of her dragon. The second and third years sit by her and Rhiannon at breakfast, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? Imogen then declares that Violet is going to start sparring with her, and she realizes that Imogen is helping her strengthen herself because her life is tethered to Xaden's, and all of the kids with relics obviously care if Xaden lives or not because they have a weird trauma bond of all of their parents being murdered by Violet's mom. Well, not just her mom, but I'm pretty sure she's the one that gave the order. Then in class, they announced that there are 41 unbonded riders, and for people to be careful, and then they go into flight lessons. Violet can't stay on Taran's back. Dane then finds her after the lessons and tells her that he should have never kissed her because it's inappropriate for first years and second years to have a relationship. She's relieved because she was afraid that she was gonna have to figure out how to tell Dane that she wasn't interested, but she's like, oh, thank God, now I don't have to worry about that. Chapter 18. Dane finds out that Violet can't stay in her seat when she's flying, and he goes into his normal drill of asking her questions like she's stupid and doesn't understand what can happen. I think she very much understands what can happen if she can't stay in her seat she'll fucking die. He keeps on trying to tell her that it's because he cares about her, and that's why he's asking her all these questions and treating her like she's stupid, but you know that it's just because he thinks that she's weak and doesn't really believe that she can survive. But she finally puts him in his place. This place cuts away the bullshit in niceties, revealing whoever you are at your core. I repeat his words from this summer. Isn't that what you said to me? Is this who you really are at your core? Someone who's so enamored with the rules he doesn't know when to bend or break them for someone he cares about? Someone so focused on the least I'm capable of doing, he can't believe I can do so much more. The warmth drains from his brown eyes. Let's get one thing straight, Dane. I take a step closer, but the distance between us only widens. The reason we'll never be anything more than friends isn't because of your rules, it's because you have no faith in me. Even now, when I've survived against all odds, bonded not just with one dragon, but two, you still think I won't make it. So forgive me, but you're about to be some of the bullshit that this place cuts away from me. I was like, fuck! You tell him! Then some kid's special power comes in, and he can read minds, but that's considered a security concern because they can't control it. Dane's power is like he can touch people and read their minds, which you can control that because he has to be able to touch them to do it, but this kid can just read everybody's minds, so he'd be considered a security threat. So the teacher that helps everybody with their powers once they come in snaps his neck. Violet is like, whoa, I knew that it was a capital defense, but I wasn't expecting him just to snap his neck in front of everybody. Then we move forward, it's nighttime. Violet wakes up to Taryn in her head. That's how they communicate. They just like talk to each other in their brains. There are 7 people in her room trying to kill her. Oren is one of them. He's the guy that she knocked out at the threshing. Taryn wanted her to kill him when they were there, but she didn't want to because she didn't think that it was fair that he was unarmed and knocked out, so she left him. Taryn tells Violet that he's almost there, which it means Xaden. She tries to fight off people. She stabs one guy in the leg, another girl in the shoulder, and like takes somebody else out, but all of her hits are not killing blows. And then Oren ends up getting her pinned to his chest. Her bedroom door slams open. Then Andarna steps in and freezes everybody. Chapter 19. Violet sneaks away from Oren's grip because time is frozen, and she realizes that Xaden is standing in her doorway. Ardrana, I never remember how to say that, but she unfreezes time. Xaden tells them that they're all dead. Killing somebody in their sleep is against the rules, so he kills all of them. Garrick and Bodhin, they're both kids who have the relic mark, and Bodhin is specifically Xaden's cousin, come and help move the bodies. That some other people come and help too. Xaden asks Violet if she's hurt and looks over her wounds. This is when I pretty much started only reading the book for any scene that was with them together. I stopped reading it for the fantasy and I started reading it for the romance. Xaden becomes hella protective, but it's not in like a gross, overly jealous way, and I didn't know that I liked that kind of thing until now. He becomes overly protective. Well, 1, because his life is also at stake, but 2, because everybody's trying to kill her. And he cares about her. Taryn demands that she needs to trust Xaden. He helps her put her shoes on, and they go to the flight field. On the walk, Xaden tells her that she's going to have to get used to killing people, and points out that he notices that she went out of her way to only wound 3 people and that they wouldn't die from their injuries. She asks him what he was doing out at 2 a.m. because he's fully dressed, and he refuses to tell her. They go to speak to the dragons to find out like what the hell happened because Adriana froze time. They basically find out that the golden one is technically not full grown. That's why she can't breathe fire and she doesn't have claws. Yeah, she's what they call a feather tail, and they have very limited knowledge on feather tails, and it's because it's what baby dragons are. Her parents died before she was born, and Sigel and Taryn took her under their wings. I put literally. She's only 2, and since she's little, she can give her gift directly to Violet. Like, instead of Violet manifesting her own power, she can just directly, but it's also super draining on her, and if she uses it, it could drain her too fast and kill her. And they tell Violet and Xaden that they can't tell anybody because feathertails don't bond with people since their power is too unstable. After the meeting, Zane says they have to figure out how the unbonded got into her room. Violet tells him that there was a writer there, that she unlocked the door and left. We're about halfway through. Chapter 20. It's the next day. Violet realizes that she won Xaden. I put me too, girl. I don't really know why you didn't realize it from the beginning. She literally called him exquisite the first time she saw him. Xaden trades someone in their squad with a guy named Liam. He's like top of their class, fucking bulky as shit. He's one of the best characters in the book, and he's now Violet's glorified bodyguard. Literally, he just follows Violet around, is super loyal to Xaden because he feels like he owes his life to him, whittles dragons out of wood all the time. That's pretty much that's it. Violet's not happy about the new arrangement. You're overstepping. My nails bite into my palms. You haven't begun to see overstepping, he warns, his voice dropping low, sending a shiver down my spine. Any threat against you is a threat against me, and as we already established, I have more important things to do than sleep on your floor. Xaden then moves to tell Panchek, he's one of the guys in charge, he's the professor that oversees Battle Brief, I hate all the names in this book, about what happened the night before. Dane gets mad because Violet didn't tell him about what happened, and she thinks to herself that she didn't tell him because he wouldn't have believed her, which I definitely think that that's the case. I don't think he would have fucking believed her, and I don't really blame her for not telling him to begin with. She would have been like, all these people got in my room and tried to kill me, and he would have been like, the bodies would have been on the floor, and he would have been like, there's nobody in here, Violet. You're just too weak to be here, and we need to sneak you off to the scribe quadrant as soon as possible. It's then revealed that Amber Mavis, the wing leader that said that she was a cheater before, is the one that let them into her room. And naturally, Dane doesn't believe her. Amber would never. Dane shakes his head. A wing leader would never. He turns completely to face me. Get up there and tell everyone that he's lying, V. But he's not, I say as gently as I can. That's impossible. His cheeks flush a molten shade of red. I was there, Dane. The reality of his disbelief hurts so much more than I expected, like a blow to my already battered ribs. Wing leaders are beyond reproach. Then why are you so quick to call our own wing leader a liar? My brows raise in challenge, daring him to say what he's so careful to keep quiet. Amber denies such a thing. Dane is smug as shit about it. He's like, haha, and then pushes further. See, Dane swings his arm, pointing towards the redhead. Put a stop to this right now, Violet. She was with them in my room, I say simply. Shouting won't convince him, nothing will. That's impossible. He lifts his hands as though ready to cut my face. Let me see. Give me the memory, he orders. Ugh, bitch just demands to read her mind. I was like, oh my god, you're just, well, first, he's like, you need to have a high security clearance to know what my power is, and then just literally in front of everybody at breakfast, he's like, give me your memories. I don't believe you, let me read your mind. Fuck him. The dragons fly in. Violet's dragon, the Professor Panchek, Xaden's dragon, and then I'm assuming some of the dragons of the guys who help clean the bodies out. They can share their riders' memories and like talk amongst themselves to figure out what to do. Amber's found guilty and sentenced to death because she broke like the one fucking rule that is very clear. Don't try to kill somebody when they're sleeping. Violet tries to beg for them not to kill her, but it's the dragon's way, and she's burned to ash in front of everybody. Chapter 21. Violet has her first day of Liam following her around on Xaden's orders. Liam lets her know Xaden and Liam were foster brothers. She's like, wait, what? And he's like, what did you think they did with all of the kids after they killed their parents? And basically you just find out that all of the kids are being fostered by different people in the country. He owes his life to Xaden because of reasons that will come up later. So he says that following Violet around is like the least that he can do to like repair what Xaden has done for him. Violet's sexually frustrated because that needs to be mentioned. And Liam also tells Violet that Xaden put a ward on her door, so she's the only one that can open it now. So nobody can really try to come in her room and kill her, even if they wanted to. Chapter 22. Violet is sparring with Rihanna, talking about how she's annoyed that Liam is following her everywhere and that she hasn't channeled any magic from her dragon yet. Xaden and Garrick come into the room. I also hate that name, Garrick. Come into the room, stripping off their shirts to do their own sparring because everybody needs to train. Like, that's what they're there for. Violet loses her mind because she's never seen Xaden shirtless before, and then Rihanna is like, you need to pay attention, and then she realizes that Violet is staring at shirtless guys and starts staring too. Garrick's wider, the more densely packed with muscle than Xaden, his rebellion relic only extending to his shoulder, the second largest I've seen. Only Xaden's reaches his carved jawline. That is, Rihanna murmurs beside me. It sure is, I agree. Stop objectifying our wing leader, Liam teases. Is that what we're doing? Rihanna asks, not bothering to look away. My mouth waters at the muscled expanse of his back and the sculpted ass. Yeah, I think that's what we're doing, Liam snorts. We could just be watching for technique. Yeah, we absolutely could be, but I'm not. His sculpted ass. If you just took out all of the fantasy, this would just be an erotica novel. I'm convinced of it. Oh, after this, Jack comes into play because of course he does. We need to be reminded that he's angry and wants to kill Violet. He makes a comment about snapping Violet's neck when they finally get paired to spar against each other. Violet reminds him that he ran away when she fucked up his shoulder in threshing, and he gets mad about it. But like, bitch, you ran away. You're like, I'm gonna snap your neck, bitch. Do you remember when you were facing her 3-on-1 and you ran? Because I do. Anyways, Dan gets mad at her for egging Dane, might as well just call him Dan, fucking basic white bitch. Dane gets mad at her for egging Jack on, and she's upset because it's the first time that he's talked to her since the whole Amber situation went down, which is just very on brand. He's at least the boy's consistent. Xaden steps in between them and tells Dane to give them a moment, and it's because he wants to know why she's not wearing her corset. I just realized I never mentioned what her corset was. So, rewind back to the beginning. When her sister made her change clothes before she went to go walk across the little wall thing, she put her in this corset, which was specially made out of scales from her sister's own dragon. So it's like impenetrable to be like stabbed against. Violet wears it in her sleep all the time, but she's not wearing it right now. Man, that's the corset. You want to tell me why the fuck you're not wearing that? His tone is soft but deadly as he points towards the bench where my armor lies. I have to wash it at some point, and you thought it would be a good idea during sparring? His chest heaves like he's battling to control himself. I'm just trying not to notice his chest or the heat he's throwing off like a damn furnace. I washed it before sparring, knowing it could dry while your guard dog just keeps watch, as opposed to sleeping without it because we both know what happens behind locked doors around here. He tells her that he made sure nobody can get in her room, so he confirms that she has wards put on her door. Because I'm supposed to trust you? Yes, a vein in his neck bulges, and you make it so easy. Sarcasm drips from my voice. You know I can't kill you. Fuck Swarringale. The entire quadrant knows I can't kill you. He leans into my space, eclipsing the rest of the room, but doesn't mean you can't hurt me. To that response, he starts giving her pointers on fighting, and she tells him she's getting enough advice from Taran, barging into her head all the time, and he tells her to block him out. Like, that's so easy. Girl hasn't even channeled any of her powers yet. You think that she knows how to block out the dragon talking in her mind? Then learn how to block it out, he says. Like it's just that simple. What, with all the power I'm wielding? My brows raise. Or were you unaware that I'm still not channeling? I want to throttle him, to shake some ever-loving sense in that beautiful head of his. He leans in, so we're almost nose to nose. I'm annoyingly aware of everything you do. Thanks to Liam. No, he's annoyingly aware of everything that you do because he wants to fuck you. Every inch of my body vibrates with anger, with irritation, with whatever this electric tension is between us. We stand there, our eyes locked in combat. After that exchange, he turns around and noses a dozen little scars all over his back, and Taran tells her that she held her own and controlled her temper well, and so she's ready for powers. I forgot to mention this. After a rider is bonded with their dragon, they get given like a fancy tattoo, which is called I think it's called a sigil, and that's how they channel the magic through their dragons. So Taran's back is not Taran. Xaden's back, it has like a giant blue dragon on it, and then it's just covered in scars. Later that night, Violet's powers finally come in, but it's when Taran and Sigel are getting it on, so she's also super horny. She opens her door to Liam outside, thinks about jumping his bones for a minute. He's like, why the fuck are you looking at me like that? And she's like, he's not what she really wants. She wants Xaden. I was kind of hoping that she would just fuck Liam because, I mean, bitch is horny all the time, but no. Sneaks out of her room to get some fresh air. She waits until Liam goes to bed. And of course, Xaden is out there because why not? He's smoking weed. It's called Charum, but you can tell that it's weed because she's like, that's illegal. And he's like, if you're bonded to what the fuck's her name? Sigel and Taran, you'd smoke it too. His eyes meet mine in the moonlight. Oh, Violence, you're going to have to learn to shield against Taran, and his escapades with Sigel will drive you mad or into someone else's bed. He walks her through how to ground herself and shield off the energy that's coming in, and so he touches her, he grabs her face. It requires touching me, my eyes flutter shut at the sensation of his skin against mine. Not at all, just one of the perks of not thinking too clearly. You have incredible touchable skin. Which, technically, is true, because if you have EDS, one of the symptoms is having aggressively soft, smooth skin. She grounds and shields perfectly the first time, and Xaden is fucking just turned on by it. Xaden studies me with an intensity that makes me sway towards him. You're astonishing. He shakes his head. I couldn't do that for weeks. He nearly pulls her in for a kiss, but pushes her away at the last minute and is like, it would be a cataclysmic mistake. But then it's like, fuck it. And they have a steamy makeout session in the courtyard. And he pulls away before they start doing anything more because he thinks that she just wants him because of the intense heat of the bond. But she's really just been wanting to jump his bones since the first time that she met him. So I don't think it has anything to do with that. She leaves. In chapter 23, Violet tells Rhiannon about the steamy makeout session, and then Violet and Xaden make dramatic eye contact across the courtyard. As if he feels me staring, Xaden lifts his head, his gaze colliding with mine across the space with the same effect as a touch. My pulse skitters and my lips part. Dane shows up because he's still here. Just too bad. And he wants to talk to Violet. He admits that he didn't believe her about Amber, but he was butthurt because he had to find out about what happened to her overnight from a bunch of other people. And she gives him this. You didn't ask, I said softly. You reached for my head like you were entitled to my memory after blatantly telling me you didn't believe me and you demanded I show you. It's everything I could do to keep my voice even. 2 lines appear between his eyebrows. I didn't ask. Bitch! You don't even remember that you just demanded to read her mind in front of everybody? He's like, oh, I didn't ask? Wow. That's really on brand for me. Fuck. I should have remembered that. Fuck him! Tells him that since he didn't believe her, she didn't even want to tell Xaden about it because she didn't think that he would believe her either, but he did. This just starts, especially now that she knows that she wants Xaden and they had a steamy makeout session in the courtyard, this just starts the trend of Dane just shoving Violet farther and farther into Xaden's arms without even realizing it, just being himself. Dane then realizes that Violet trusts Xaden more than him at this point, and he's all like, I have high security clearance. Xaden has more than one reason to hate your mom. And it's like, buddy, at this point, Xaden could try to kill her mom, and I don't think she would care. Okay, skip forward 2 months. Jack finally is paired against Violet to spar. Violet gets Liam to promise not to say anything to Xaden because she doesn't want him to butt in and try to get her pairing changed, be like viewed as weak, even though everybody knows Xaden is just there to protect her. Everybody knows, but she thinks that this is gonna stop people from knowing. Once the fight finally starts happening, Liam freaks out and she lets him run off to find Xaden, but the third years are busy away doing third year things and he won't get here in time anyways. Jack breaks the rules and starts using his powers. He's like fucking choking her. I don't really know what his powers are, but other people were trying to touch him and it was hurting them too. She ends up shoving a vial that she had like in her corset against his mouth and he drops her. She figured out he was allergic to oranges and dumped orange juice down his throat. When, who is it? Rydek? He's like, what the hell happened? And she's like, oranges! He's allergic to oranges! And then she wakes up in the healer's quadrant with Xaden there and he's like, oranges? Really? Chapter 24. Xaden's upset because she didn't tell him about Jack. She points out there's nothing he could have done but make her look weak and tries to bring up the kiss and he shuts it down. That's not for discussion. Something flashes in his eyes and it's quickly replaced by a mask of cool indifference. Seriously? I should have known better considering he avoided it this long. It was a mistake. You and I are going to be stationed together for the rest of our lives, never able to escape each other. Getting involved, even on a physical level, is a colossal blunder. No point talking about it. Xaden tells her that he's taking over everything that has to do with protecting her since she was able to get Liam to keep a secret from him. Next day is the first day of sparring with Xaden. This is also first point towards Xaden in the department of not undermining Violet's abilities, but giving her the ability to work with what she has, and had a bunch of little daggers made specifically for her that fit in her hands better than the big daggers that people have. But you can only earn weapons if you gain them from disarming someone, so she has to take them off of his body, and everything gets really sexual because of course it does. He lowers his mouth to my ears. You won't like what happens if you push me. Or maybe I will. I turn just enough that my lips brush the shell of his ear. He jerks up and the heat in his gaze makes me all too aware of everywhere our bodies connected. Disarm me before I test that theory in front of everybody in the gym. There are multiple times where he tells her, test that theory and I'll just fuck you in front of everybody. Erotica novel with dragons, that's what this is. It should just be one of those dragon shifter romances where they just fuck every chapter. Another month goes by and she's upset that he hasn't kissed her again, no matter how much she's been pushing. And boy, she pushes. Xaden pulls her out of class. Dane throws a fit because he's Dane. Xaden takes her to the flight field and they run into her mom on the walk up there. And then Xaden realizes that Violet and her mom don't have a good relationship. Violet never told her mom about the unbonding attacking her in her room. And the girl just full trauma dumps on him. But also, first years can't send letters or anything to people, so I don't really know how she would have told her mom specifically that she was attacked, but you do think that it would have maybe come back to her mom that 7 people were in her daughter's room and tried to kill her. Trauma dumping time. I didn't realize it was quite like that between you, Xaden says, his tone surprisingly soft as we start down the box canyon towards the flight field. Oh, that's nothing, I toss out, intentionally making my tone as flippant as possible. She spent almost a year ignoring me after Dad died. A self-depreciating laugh slips past my lips, which is almost as wholesome as the years she spent barely tolerating my existence because I wasn't perfect like Brennan or a warrior like Mira. I shouldn't be saying these things. Then she tries to get him to tell her what happened between him and her mom, but he tells her there's boundaries. I'm like, girl, just because you trauma dumped doesn't mean that he has to too. It's not like a give and take situation. Chapter 25. Oh, they have this thing that they have to do for what's called a squad battle. They don't have the help of their squad leaders and ringleaders. It's pretty much a test to see if you're in battle and your squad leaders and your wing leaders get killed, if they can still manage to like work as a team, and they have to find something that would be the most helpful to the enemy and bring it back to the battle brief classroom in 6 hours. Violet comes up with the idea to break into his mom's office, and they steal a map that has all the most recent invasions and outposts on it, and they win. Chapter 26. The award for winning, Violet's squad gets to go to an outpost for a week and see everything in action. And the outpost is an hour away from where Rhiannon's family lives, and she wants to sneak out to see them. And it also so happens to be the one that her sister Mira is stationed at. Violet and Rhiannon try to sneak out, but Mira could tell that she was being shady and stops them before they sneak out. And then Violet convinces her to help them anyways. So Violet, Mira, and Rhiannon go see Rhiannon's family. Rhiannon's sister had a baby. They come back. They're talking about Xaden and goes to ask Mira about riders with mated pairs. Have you been stationed with any riders of mated pairs? I asked Mira as I closed the door behind us. One, she answers, her eyes narrowing on a darkened path in front of the house. Why? I'm just wondering how long they can be separated. Turns out about 3 days is their max. Xaden steps out of the shadows. Yep, Xaden's here. We're getting closer to the end. Can you tell I'm excited? My nose is also stuffed up and it's making it hard for me to talk. Next day, Mira runs them through a scenario like they're in battle brief, and Dane is seething over the fact that Xaden's there. He's fucking pissed. And they get into another battle of Dane accusing Xaden of coming there even though he didn't need to. Then you find out that since Xaden and Violet can have their bond, how do I explain? So a dragon and a rider have a bond where they can talk to each other in their minds. When a dragon is mated, then the rider can also talk to that dragon's mated pair, and then if that dragon has a rider, there's a chance that the connection could be strong enough to where those riders can just talk to each other in their mind, and Xaden figures out that he can talk to her in his mind, and that is what happens. So he's talking to her while they're trying to like run through the scenario. Afterwards, Mira takes Violet, Xaden, and Dane aside and rips one into Dane for being a jealous piece of shit and trying to fight with Xaden at the table. Then she turns to Xaden, and Violet says that she's worried that Xaden's going to hinder Violet's studies if they have to be together all the time for their dragons, and Xaden points out that he's the one that left his post to come to her, so she didn't have to miss out, because they could have done the other way around. She could have had to left and go to wherever he was, but he didn't do that because he doesn't want her to have to deal with it. Then a group of griffins comes, which is they're the people who ride dragons are called riders, people who ride griffins are called flyers, and they're outside of the wards that protect the country, and they keep on trying to break in for some reason. A group of griffins comes, and they have to leave, and Mira tells Xaden to get Violet out of there. You want me to trust you, Rorson? Get her the fuck out of here and find a way to keep her in her seat. We both know she's dead if she doesn't. She says again, don't die, I don't want to be an only child, and walks away. They get to the roof where all the first years are getting on their dragons. They're waiting for them to like come pick them up. Violet is arguing with Xaden because she doesn't want to leave. She's like, I could be a great help. My dragon's like the strongest dragon that there is, blah 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 blah. Xaden uses this as an opportunity to finally kiss her again, and it's just to distract her and give him time for the dragons to come, and then ask her to leave for him. Xaden's been stalling to give Taran and Sigel time to arrive. My heart sinks like a rock, pinning my feet in place. I'll hate you for this. Yeah, he nods, a flash of regret crossing his face as he draws away. I can live with that. Chapter 28. 2 days have passed since they left the post, and Violet has been waiting outside of the office of one of her professors to see if her sister's alive or not. Xaden brings her something to drink, and they have a little heart-to-heart. And he tells her a little bit about himself. 23, he answers. My birthday was in March, and I didn't even know. Mine is in July, he answers with a ghost of a smile. I know, I made it my business to know everything there was about you the second I saw you on the parapet, because that's not creepy. I let the coffee warm my freezing hands. Can't know how to ruin someone without understanding them first, he says quietly. She asked him if he still plans to kill her, and he says no. She asks what changed. Maybe it was when I saw Orin holding a knife to your throat, he says. Or maybe it was when I realized the bruises on your neck were fingerprints and wanted to kill them all over again just so I could do it slowly. Maybe it was the first time I recklessly kissed you, or when I realized I'm fucked because I can't stop thinking about doing more than just kissing you. My breath catches at his admission, but he just sighs and lets his head fall back against the wall. Doesn't even matter when, as long as it changed between us. Dane shows up because he just has to always ruin everything, and Violet figures out how to speak back to Xaden in their mind. The professor finally comes out and she gets him to tell her that her sister's fine. Her knees give out from the relief, and Dane catches her, and she stuffs her emotion down and steps out of his arms, and Xaden's gone. The drama. The love triangle that's not even actually a love triangle, it's a love line, and then Dane's just kind of like out here on the sign. You know that clip from Grey's Anatomy where Addison's like,
oh, the only people who don't know Derek loves Meredith, or Derek and Meredith.
That's pretty much what's happening right now. Moving on, she starts to ask She starts to ask Zayden random questions to get to know him, bringing one of my favorite moments in the book. The next day I ask him what his favorite food is in the middle of battle brief, using our mental connection. Pretty sure I heard him drop something in the back of the room before he answers, chocolate cake. Stop being weird. I grin. He ends up asking her what all the questions are about, and she admits that she barely knows him and tries to ask him about the scars on his back, but he flies off without answering. Another moment of her trying to push him into telling her things that he doesn't want to tell her. Her dragon ends up talking to her. Are you pushing for a reason? Taryn asks. Can you give me one not to? He cares for you. That's already hard enough for him. I scoff. He cares about keeping me alive. There's a difference. Not for him, there isn't. Then it's the first Battle of War games, which is pretty much capture the flag, but with dragons, and there's an egg involved. Zayden has a saddle made for Violet because she still can't stay on her dragon. Point 2 to him for giving her tools to help herself instead of just telling her that she's weak and that she needs to leave. And it straps to her legs, so Taryn doesn't have to use his magic to keep her on. She tries to argue against using it because she doesn't want people to think that she's weak. Fuck, that stubborn, feisty look always makes me want to kiss you. Zayden's expression remains bland, bored even, but his eyes heat as his gaze drops to my mouth. And you say this now where people can see if you actually do. My breath catches. When did I ever give you the impression that I give a fuck what people think about me? The corner of his mouth rises, and now all I can concentrate on. Damn, I only care about what they think about you. And then she says, because he's a wing leader. No, that's not why, but you'll figure it out eventually. She ends up going against Jack, and she gets pissed because Jack tries to kill Liam, and her magic manifests, and she's a lightning wielder, and she kills him. Chapter 29. When they get the flag, she lands and throws up because she killed somebody. Taryn covers her with his wings so nobody can see her, and everyone's freaking out because she can wield lightning, and it's been like a century since somebody has had the power to wield lightning, but all she can focus on is the fact that she killed Jack. Dane's response to her being shell-shocked about killing someone is, if you don't want to use that kind of power again, you don't have to. Fucking hate this dude. Zayden comes in telling him to get the fuck away from her with that nonsense, and gives her a pep talk, kind of. The world is a better place without Barlow in it. We both know that. Do I wish I had been the one to end his miserable life? Absolutely. But what you did will save countless others. He was nothing more than a bully and was only going to get worse as he grew more powerful. His dragon will choose another rider when she's ready. I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad you killed him. Dane tries to tell her that she doesn't have to use her power. She doesn't want to, blah, blah, blah. Fuck him. Later that night, Violet is throwing daggers at her practice target. She's been trying to stomach her first kill, but also not look weak in front of her. And I don't really blame her, because I don't imagine taking a life is easy, especially if it's the first time that you've ever done it. Zayden comes in to see how she's doing, and she says no one is going to try to attack her now since she can wield lightning. Do you think it works inside? I mean, how does someone wield lightning if there's no sky? Keeping my eyes locked on his, I fling the dagger at the target. The satisfying sound of the split wood, it tells me I hit true. Fuck, that was harder than it should be. He pulls in a deep breath. I think that's something you'll have to figure out. His gaze drops to my mouth, and his arms tense. In comes lots and lots of sexual tension. He takes a hold of my hands and brings them to his chest. So do whatever you need to get it out. You want to yell? Yell at me. You want to hit something? Hit me. I can take it. Hitting him is the last thing I want to do, and suddenly I'm done fighting. Come on, he whispers. Show me what you've got. I stretch up on my toes and kiss him. Chapter 30 tries to tell her that kissing him isn't what she wants, but she's literally been horned up for him since day one. They fuck for a really long time. She doesn't have control over powers, and they light her curtains on fire. I'm pretty sure some trees get started on fire on the courtyard, and they break her wardrobe. Then they lay in her bed, and he finally answers her questions about his scars. He has 107, the same number of kids that have the rebellion relic. I saw the opportunity to make a deal, he says softly, and I took it. What kind of deal leaves you with scars like that? Conflict rages in his eyes, but then he sighs. The kind where I take personal responsibility for the loyalty of 107 kids, the rebellion's leaders left behind. In return, we're allowed to fight for our lives in the Riders' Quadrant instead of being put to death like our parents. He averts his gaze. I chose the chance of death over the certainty. So basically, they were going to execute all of these kids, and Zayden put his life on the line for it. Pretty much, if one kid betrays the government and like goes against it, his life's on the line, because he was like, yes, I promise that we won't do anything against you. Then he stays for the night, but gives her one rule. He nips at my skin. I'm not sweet. Please don't mistake any part of me for soft or kind. That will only get you hurt. And whatever you do, he buries his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. Don't fall for me. Not really something you can tell somebody to do, especially when you then cuddle them. Cuddling is very intimate, Zayden. I don't know if you know this, but girl's definitely gonna fall in love with you. She wakes up the next morning and he's gone, but he left a handful of spring violets in a jar on her desk. So Do you want her to fall in love with you or not? I'm getting mixed signals, and she is too. Then Professor Carr shows up at her door, which is the guy that helps people with their magic powers, to take her to private lessons to work on her lightning wielding. She's struggling to wield anything, and the only reason why she was able to summon her lightning in the first place was because she got so angry at the fact that fuck, why do I keep calling him Zach? At the fact that Jack tried to kill Liam. So Zane, what the fuck? So Zayden tells her in their mind connection, he gives her a view of them having sex the night before from his eyes, and it works, but now she's super horny as well, because of course. Chapter 31. Violet finds a cryptic note oh my god. Violet finds a cryptic note tucked in the binding of a book of fables that her dad used to read to her. Zayden's there. I don't remember why. I think he was helping her clear out the broken wardrobe from her room. She puts him in his place by saying that she's not going to do anything with him if he doesn't get his shit together and figure out how he feels about her. Then at lunch, she stares at him and he tells her to stop looking at him, and she just keeps pushing his buttons. I'm over here keeping my hands and memories to myself because you asked me to, and you're fucking me with your eyes. That's not playing fair. She ends up getting to him. She starts talking about how if they could be together that she would get down on her knees and take his pants off and do some crazy shit with her mouth, and he chokes on his food, and his friend is like, get it out, buddy, and is like patting him on the back. Some time passes sitting in Battle Breath. She mentally asks him to take her to bed. She's flat out, I want you to take me to bed, and he's like, that's kind of hard with all these people here. Then she decides that maybe the reason why he isn't trying to do anything with her is because he has eyes for someone else. She ends up asking him there is somebody else because she can't figure out why he can't just admit that he wants her, and he ends up snapping and saying her name out loud in the middle of class instead of in their mind connection, and has to play it off like he's answering the question. Then later that night, it's the celebration of the battle that took down the rebellion kids' parents, and they're celebrating it at the writer's courtyard, which is kind of fucking crazy. You know, all these people walking around celebrating, and you have a bunch of kids there who know that these people are celebrating the fact that all of their parents were murdered, which is Liam is standing by her side, and she told him that he doesn't have to stay there because the celebration probably hurts him. She has a run-in with her mom, and then she leaves to go find Zayden. Chapter 32. She finds Zayden chilling on the parapet because that has to come back into play. I hate that word. I don't know why, but I don't like it. She starts to cross it again to get to him and realizes that she's in love with him. Zayden sees her crossing it and tells her to turn around. He wants to know what she's doing out here, and she tells him that she wants to know the same thing. She ends up telling him that she knows that he's scared, but that he really wants her, and that she knows that it's because he thinks that she won't like him for who he really is, but she's ready to risk her heart for him. He admits that he was pissed when she asked if there was someone else because he's only ever been looking at her. The more that I have, like, from going back through this book to make this script, he, even at some point, it says that he never took anybody to bed, even when he was his first year. And so I'm pretty sure this dude has just, like, not been in a relationship with anybody, like, the whole time that he's been in the writer's quadrant. He agrees to try for a relationship with him, and then tells her that seeing Dane kiss her at threshing pissed him off, and they go back to his room and fuck like 5 times. And then they get interrupted by Garrett banging on the door, telling them that they're under attack. Then chapter 33. Zayden and Violet rush to get dressed. They're worried because they've never been under attack before. They get outside, and there's a bunch of people that are still and haven't even made it into their flight clothes. A lot of them are still in their outfits from the celebration before, and Rhiannon notices that Violet is wearing Zayden's jacket, and it has his last name on it, his 3 stars for being 3rd year and everything. Then they find out that they were hauled out of bed for war games, and when Dane comes over to give instructions, Rhiannon leans on Violet to cover up the part of Zayden's jacket so he can't see that she's wearing Zayden's jacket. They go to change and meet back on the flight field. Oh, this is another point for Zayden. When they get back on the flight field, Violet sees that Ardana is wearing a harness, and Zayden made it for her to attach to Taran, so when she can't keep up because she can't fly as fast as the other ones, she can still come along. He just keeps making things for her. Zayden comes over demanding Liam and Violet come with him, and he's posted outside of the wards for this part of the games, and Dane tries to argue that Violet shouldn't come with him. Zayden's like, well, I don't see you arguing that I don't take Liam, it's just because you only care about Violet. And he tries to accuse Zayden of separating Violet to use her against her mom, and she tries to stop them from arguing because they're fucking going at each other again. Zayden seethes. You want the truth? She's a fuck of a lot safer with me beyond the wards than she's with you. We both know it. Dane decides to stand in Zayden's path anyways to do I don't know what. Stop. I put a hand on Zayden's arm. Zayden, stop. If you want me to go with you, I'll go. that simple. His gaze shifts to meet mine and immediately softens. No fucking way, Dane whispers. He figures out that they have a thing. He still tries to stop her from going. Don't go, Violet, please. He's going to get you killed. I know you think Xaden has alternative motives, but I trust him. He's had every opportunity and has never hurt me. I move towards Dane. At some point, you'll have to let this go. He then just gives up and walks away, telling her that he'll miss her. I've been sitting on the floor for a long time. Okay, chapter 34. They make a pit stop after flying for hours to their outpost, and Violet and Xaden make out against a rock, and then some people show up. That's that chapter. Chapter 35. They are griffin riders that Xaden and others have been bringing weapons to in the middle of the night, and that's why when he showed up at her room, he was fully dressed in flight clothes. Waverin and Vian from her fable book that her dad used to read her are real, and it turns out the government has just been pretending like they don't exist and they don't want to deal with the problem. And it turns out that Xaden's dad and all of the kids' parents who were part of the separatist party were technically on the right side of everything, and they were just trying to help the people outside the wards because they're literally just getting murdered by Vian, which Vian are people who they want power and they take it directly from the earth, but it's like all consuming and poisons their veins or something like that, and they literally can summon Wyvern with their powers. Violet realizes that everyone that she's with is a child of a separatist. Taran tells her that he picked her because of how smart and cunning she is, and that he knows that she'll pick the right side. She agrees to help them, but tells Xaden that she doesn't trust him anymore because of all the secret keeping. And they finally get to their post. It's abandoned. There's nobody there, completely. What did Dane say to you before we left? He leaned in, whispering something. I blinked, trying to remember. He said something like, I searched my memory. I'll miss you, Violet. His body goes tense. And he said I was going to get you killed. Yes, but he always says that, I shrug. What would Dane have to do with emptying an entire outpost? Then Xaden has the audacity to ask her, did you tell him about my trips here? Xaden questions, his eyes hardening. No, I shake my head. Unlike some people, I never hid anything from you. They end up realizing that Dane touched her and read her mind without her permission and gave the information over because he's a little bitch. He knew that they were going to get sent off and was trying to stop her from going because the mission that they were giving is pretty much just survive if you can. Chapter 36. They have to choose between leaving and going to the new location to continue war games or letting everyone there die. Violet realizes this. My chest tightens. Their parents died to expose the truth while mine sacrificed my brother to keep the heinous secret, which is really fucked up if you put it that way. Violet agrees to fight and they fight. Liam's dragon gets killed and Liam dies, which I was upset about. Chapter 37. Violet goes back to fighting. Vian gets on Taran and she has to get out of her saddle. She gets stabbed in the side. They continue to fight. She pushes her lightning wield to the edge, and after they win, she ends up falling off Taran's back because she's just like fucking worn out. Chapter 38. Violet is going through it. The person that stabbed her with a dagger, it was tipped with like something green and they don't know what kind of poison it is, and they argue about taking her to Nolan to get healed. Xaden is like, no, there's someone closer. Garrick is like, you'll put everything at risk. Take her to a mysterious place, and she's in and out of consciousness and hears Xaden say, you have to fight V. Xaden whispers against my forehead as we move. You can hate me all you want when you wake up. You can scream and hit and throw your fucking daggers at me for all I care, but you have to live. You can't make me fall for you and then die. None of this is worth it without you. He sounds so sincere, I almost believe him. Then she hears a familiar voice say Xaden's name and then remembers Liam's dead. Chapter 39. This is the last chapter and it is in Xaden's point of view, which I was not totally mad about because it was a nice change of pace after reading 600 and something pages of this. Anyways, Violet has been fucking out for 3 days. She's pretty much in a coma. And the majority of this chapter is him just feeling like shit for keeping secrets from her and for fighting his feelings for her and for regretting not telling her that he loved her because she's told him that she loved him a few times and he just like didn't. Like you could tell that he was excited about it, but he never said it back. She wakes up and doesn't remember anything at first and has this like dopey smile and kisses him, and then he starts asking her questions and she ends up remembering and goes to look out the window of the building that they're in. Where are we? And don't you dare lie to me, she says. Not again. Not again. You remember. I remember. They're in Othrida. It's where Xaden lived with his dad. It was burned to the ground, but a lot of the buildings were made out of stone, so it didn't really burn to the ground. They've been rebuilding it in secret since like everything went down. And since 3 of the marked ones getting together can't be seen by Melgreen, nobody really knows that they've been rebuilding this place. Xaden then asks Violet if she will be working on his side, and she tells him, just because I believe you and I'm willing to fight with you doesn't mean I trust you with my heart again. I can't be with someone I don't trust. He tells her that he loves her. Well, he wants to tell her that he loves her, but he knows that he's doing it for all the wrong reasons, which is very true because she's just mad at him and if you're just like, but I love you. It's just kind of like trying to slap a band-aid over everything, and you can't really do that. He then admits to her, it took me a long time to trust you, a long time to realize I fell for you. Someone knocks, I ignore it. I fell for you. I lower my head and look straight into her gorgeous eyes. She might be rightfully pissed, but she stirs Malik isn't fickle. Malik is the god of death. You know what? You might not trust me anymore, but you still love me. Her lips part. She doesn't deny it. I gave you my trust for free once, and once is all you get. She masked the hurt with a quick blink. Never again. Those eyes will never reflect hurt I inflicted ever again. I fucked up by not telling you sooner, and I won't even try to justify my reasons, but now I'm trusting you with my life, with everyone's lives. I've risked it all by bringing her here instead of taking her back to Bashgith, back to the Writer's Quadrant. I'll tell you anything you want to know and everything you don't. I'll spend every single day of my life earning back your trust. Then he says, you gave me your heart and I'm keeping it. You don't really get to just like announce that. Yeah, you gave me your heart and I know that you're telling me right now that you don't trust me, but I'm keeping it. I love him as a character, but buddy, you don't really just get to decide that. There's another knock on the door. Violet asks if there's a chance that the Wyvern attack was just part of the war games, and this is how the chapter ends. That definitely wasn't an accident, little sister, he says from the doorway. I sigh and move to the side, watching Violet's eyes widen as she sees him standing in the doorway. I told you I knew better poison masters, I tell her softly. You weren't healed. You were mended. Brennan? She stares at her brother in open-mouthed shock. Brennan just grins and opens his arms. Welcome to the revolution, Violet! Okay. And that's the end of Fourth Wing on a giant cliffhanger. Now let's get into my thoughts on this book. So basically, my thoughts are I enjoyed reading it because I finished it in a day and a half. It's a really long book. It took a long time to get through. The more that I thought about it and spending my 3 days writing this script and going back through the book and reading over my highlights and collecting all the screenshots for this, I realized that I enjoyed Xaden and Violet, and I was reading just to get the parts where they were together. When it was the action and everything, I was really just like I was really skimming because I didn't care. So I have decided that I'm splitting my way that I'm reviewing this book into 2 parts. If I have to review it as a romance, the sexual tension and everything was off the charts. I would give it probably a 4 stars. But as a fantasy, I didn't really love it. There's a lot of info dumping, a lot of info dumping. You could easily poke holes into like Melgreen and his dragon, marking all these kids with relics and not realizing that then they wouldn't be able to predict his battle strategy because of it. I guess you could argue that since everybody's powers are unique because of their like the way that they're connected with their dragon, that maybe the dragon wouldn't have ever known that. My brain hurts. I don't even know what to think. I am scared to read the second book. The author has confirmed that this is going to be a 5-book series, and the second book, the audiobook, is 28 hours long. I'm just scared that they're going to ruin the relationship with Xaden and Violet, and I don't know if I have the energy to read 700 something pages just for more romance between them. That's kind of where I'm at. Basically, I have to say, fuck you to that guy who asked me if my tattoo was for Fourth Wing, because I spent a long time of my life reading this book and I can't ever get that time back. Well, anyways, if you finished this, tell me what your thoughts are on Fourth Wing. Unless you're just a diehard fan and want to argue with me about my opinions. I hate Dane as a character. I think Jack was useless. He was just there to just be a bully for no reason. I also read that this book has already been picked up to be made into an Amazon Prime show, so that's interesting. I do think that it's nice that there was representation for EDS, because I feel like a lot of people maybe don't even know what EDS is. That's it. That's the end of this video. I don't even know what else to say. My brain's fried. I can't even think of thoughts or words or phrases to put together. So thank you so much for watching and sticking around. If you did, if you want to see more of me, I have a TikTok, an Instagram. You can check out my website. I sell crochet patterns on there and just my finished crochet things. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!